Kia ora. You know where I'm from, but actually I'm from New Zealand. Okay, let's get going. This is a shorter one because, unlike Australia, New Zealand has less. It's a smaller country. Everything is smaller, and that's good, not bad. So, you know the deal. Small place, small population, 1 million, World War I, and 10% of those 1 million went to war, and 103,000 people in all. That included women and included nurses. New Zealand girls and young women were eager volunteers, and there's the figures. 18,277 died, some 41,000, or was it, well, the numbers are variable, were wounded, so you don't necessarily die, but that doesn't mean there's no impact. And another 1,000 were dead within 5 years of 1918. And again, a massive, massive impact on a small place and a small town. New Zealand's biggest city, even now, is only 3 million people. Back then it was nothing like that. So in most places it was devastating. I'm very grateful to a lot of friends for these images and these names, because Joanne, and you'll see the names in brackets, John Adam, the great garden historian of New Zealand, to whom I call a co-author of this. You owe a lot of this information. So this is Auckland's the biggest city. It was the capital. Wellington's now the capital. This is the old capital. And here we are in the King's Domain in the middle of Auckland, the prime space, using Australian, lily-pilly, Canary Island, and native species, Podocarpus, Vitex, Coronacarpus, they're all New Zealand trees, Cupressus, Phoenix not. How did it happen? Similar things than we've heard in other places. Beautification or beautifying societies. This idea of adornment is very important in New Zealand. I thought there was one society of beautification in New Zealand. That shows how ignorant I was. They were all over, and it was quite competitive to have one to demonstrate that you were doing stuff. Civic leagues, there were other groups. Arbor Day was important, just like in America and Australia. Primary schools and children were very, very important, and we're still finding out more and more avenues, so this number may go up as more research on local newspapers. Now digitised is my favourite word, and digitised newspapers, and you've seen examples, are the most help, because it's a local record of a local event and local involvement, which most were. But other groups, agricultural, pastoral, growing, industry association groups, very important. And their showgrounds. Most towns had a showground, a market square or a place for events, trading. Very important. So adorning those parks, those showgrounds, often was done as a memory thing. Scenery preservation movement. Sounds an American concept or terminology. Not so. That was important in New Zealand. And here we go again. Women's groups of various names. Women's societies. The Maori Welfare League. There's an interesting entry from Indigenous New Zealanders. Civic leagues adorning cities. Some local governments, some county and some borough. This is an English old system of government. Each level of government got involved in a way, but basically bottom up, basically community. So here's some examples quickly. South Island town of Ashburton. This is prime sheep country. And again, notice the name Peace Park. Again, sounds American name, but we're not in America, we're in New Zealand. 1919. Just a single tree, and single trees are much more common than avenues in New Zealand. It's interesting. The single tree took off. Here's another one in the Domain, the main park, a Victory Oak. There's that name again, Victory. And it's got the names of 3 dead sons of the 5 local boys from that town serving. The largest, Joanne's shown you a glimpse of this, it's Oamaru, which again is south of Christchurch in the South Island. It's oaks, it's called the Memorial Oak Avenue, and there are, interestingly, English or European oak, Quercus robur, but also Turkish oak, and Turkey was a very important battlefield for the New Zealanders and for the Anzacs. So Quercus cerris, the Turkish oak, was one, I thought that was rather good and a non-racist, a non-sort of an inclusive choice of species for that memorial. And here's the main pivot, the main sort of plaque in the middle of it all, where the VIP, where the celebration happened, the official dedication. But these trees were all planted well before that by the community. Don't wait for government. The community will do this and will do it now. I'm angry about this, I'm grieving. Here's the leaves of those 2 oaks, and here's the main plaque, the text. But just interesting, that connection to Gallipoli and being acknowledged. It wasn't English oaks because we won, it was English and Turkish oaks. I thought that was interesting. It may be hard to read this, but it wasn't one line, it was actually spokes of a wheel, and the spokes converged in the middle of town at that plaque. So roads, the main road in the main highway through town, but also regional roads, and a couple of trees outside the gate of a farm where they'd lost a couple of boys. You know, a row of trees over in a little hamlet on the outside of town were a row of... the trees were as close to the origins of the boys and girls that were lost. Interesting. And there's the dedication ceremony and the plaque. Some of those are just fragments that are left now. That dark blob is more modern... well, no, it's native trees. The green in the middle over there is the actual two oaks to the two boys, the Jeffers brothers, in Oamaru, in the country. No evident avenue, but that was the form this one took. Joanne's shown you this, but some crosses, and these are replacement modern concrete ones. The timber wore out, so this is having a period of renewal. Some have got more than one name on them because more than one boy and more, to that family. Interesting that that's having an afterlife of replanting, replaquing in concrete. Exhibitions, and again, public awareness. This is recent exhibitions about those oaks in Oamaru. Up the road, Waitaki in Canterbury province, not Otago, but around Christchurch still. Same thing, 1922, European oaks. Joanne's shown you a better picture of this in autumn. These are oaks, 500 of them, around Fairlie, another Canterbury town. And it's significant as a whole avenue, and there's no plaques on these. This is one piece of planting, one avenue for the whole district's boys, I think. But not just the south, the North Island, and the far north, Whangarei, Onerahi, and this is a grove, not an avenue, but Memorial Oak Grove, 1921, so after the war, 10 local boys, European oaks. Here we are back in Canterbury, Timaru, 1922, using ash trees. It's lovely to see ash trees in France running up roads. I thought they were all dead thanks to a fungus or whatever. They're not, but here's some in New Zealand. Pukekohe, which is southern Auckland, some of the best soil in the country, the vegetable garden of the country. Interesting, public school, 1924, using shrubs, not trees, Camellia japonica, I'm sure you know what that is, planted by school children. The school has morphed, evolved and so on, but the shrubs survive, and there they are. There's the kids putting them in and looking after them, which is a lovely photograph. Dunedin down the bottom, Anzac Avenue. This is really important in terms of numbers of dead in that country, was Turkey. So some of them are called Anzac Avenue, oaks, elms and horse chestnuts. A big debate. Will it be native? Will it be exotic? What tree to choose? Auckland, this is the main shrine for the whole country. You know what the buildings looks like, but we never got, well, we got the avenue and it was removed for American troops and stores and stuff getting ready for the Second World War. So very little of it survives today. This big debate about nationalism, would it be, has to be a native species? What about rainforest trees that only survive in forests, don't survive in open roads with hard conditions, strong winds and high sun? What will survive? Do we even know how to grow native trees as trees? We don't, to our shame. Erratic maintenance, faltering memory, translocation, issues, the same issues. High country, South Island, New Zealand. Interesting that the State Forest Service put in an avenue, and this is a big forestry area and tourism now. Again, digitised newspapers, the Evening Post, one of the main metro dailies, 20 miles of trees planted, and this is a kind of west to east coast America, north to south capital, old to new, Wellington to Auckland idea. It may or may not have ever been completed, but certainly parts of it were put in, and here's Wanganui and Waitotara out of Wanganui jumping the gun. We've done it first, we've done 20 miles. Not bad. Don't know how much of that survives. The Wairarapa, which is far bottom of the North Island out of Wellington. Gladstone, Scarlet Oaks. This is World War II, but the same thing goes on in the Second World War. And this is interesting. This probably shouldn't be in this talk, but I wanted to show you it because it was the only one I knew before these friends helped me. And this is Devonport, which is across the harbour from Auckland, using an Australian and a New Zealand tree, an Anzac Avenue in spirit and in presence. Australia one side of the road, New Zealand on the other. From the 1950s, again, planted by school kids. So this is a newish one, which is bushland.
5 minutes.
5 minutes, yes, sure. I'll slow down a bit. Waitakere ranges, which are the bush cradle around the south of Auckland and the west of Auckland, the belt of forest around it. And people live there because they love the bush and the forest. The feel of the place is wild and is natural. But they have a kind of avenue, which is a tunnel through bush. It's not exotic trees, it's native. It's not even just trees, it's everything that you get in the forest. But it's called an avenue. Well, I think it should be called an avenue. And as you've seen other and better photographs, this is a clip out of the newspaper that John sent me a month ago, out of the Herald in Auckland, showing crosses where those avenues would have been had the Americans not needed the space in front of the War Memorial Museum in Auckland. So again, school children getting involved now in remembering. School children are planting crosses in the run-up to Armistice Day the other day. So that's a bit of a jolt, but I'd like to give credit to these people because really it's their information and I'm just rather happy to be the conduit for it. And some of them, I mean, you've met Joanne today, some of them are quiet librarians, some of them are unpaid academics, a mixture, and some of them are Australians, I'm pleased to say. But yeah, kia kaha, welcome to New Zealand.